share.
Okay. Hi, I'm Margaret Murchison, and I am a native of Sanford and Lee County. I've been here all my life, and I'm not ashamed to tell my age. I was born in 1948 at the then Lee County Hospital. A lot of people had midwives at that time, but I was born in the hospital. My parents were Alexander and Sadie Emerson Bagley. My mother hailed from Goshen, North Carolina, in Chatham County. My father hailed from South Carolina. There were 6 children in the family and 2 adults. And we grew up in a little house on Saunders Street, as a matter of fact, where Stewart Manor is located now. That was before urban renewal came in and bought the properties, and the people had to find somewhere else to live. So it was a happy childhood growing up. You know, you didn't know you were poor. You took a bath on Saturday night. We always referred to that as National Bath Night. Of course, you had to get what we called a half bath Monday through Friday. But on Saturday night, you got in the big tub and you took a real bath to get ready for Sunday school on Sunday. And like I said, everybody got a bath. You had your clothing. You did not wear your good clothes to play in when you came in from school. You took off those clothes and you put on whatever, because in those days, you wore your clothes to school 2 days in a row. That's why my mom would not buy us dresses that had white collars on them, because the collar might get dirty, so she made sure that our little plaid dresses didn't have a white collar. You wore those dresses 2 days before they were hung up, and then you put something else. You didn't have that many clothes, not like now when your closets are overflowing. So we grew up, we went to school at W.B. Wicker. We didn't have kindergartens. We didn't have preschools. We didn't have those extra classes after school. You stayed after school if you had a band, activity, sports, you were in a club, newspaper staff, or you got in trouble during the day and you had to stay after school late. Well, our in-school suspension was when you got home, because your parents were waiting for you, and whatever that teacher told your parents, and you got it when you got home. That was in-school suspension. So, went to school, 1st through 12th grade at Wicker School, best school in the entire world. Maybe it's because it was the only school I ever went to. The teachers were perfect. You always wanted to be a teacher because you like to emulate your teachers. The school was an extension of home. You know, you were there for everything. Your parents supported you. If you were in a play, or rapping the maypole, or a spelling bee, your parents were there. Now, parents work so many hours, strange hours. A lot of times they don't go to see their children play in football games or basketball games, whatever. Back then, that was entertainment. You know, you didn't have anything else to do. Most people didn't have a car. You went to school, and we lived so close to the school. We walked to school, and usually I was sitting on the steps waiting for the teacher to unlock the door, because I loved school. We didn't have to wonder where we were going to get money from to buy construction paper or crayons or scissors. The cabinet in the back of the classrooms were filled with those kinds of things. I always wonder what happened. Now teachers have to pay for that stuff if they need it, but then it was there for you. But we did everything at the school. We had plays. Mr. Wicker, W.B. Wicker, Professor William Bartell Wicker was the principal. We knew, of course, later years it was B.T. Bullock, and we loved him just like we did Mr. Wicker. Mr. Wicker was the kind of principal who wanted to see every child succeed. So if he caught you in the hole doing something that you had no business doing, oh boy, you had to pay dearly. He was this little short, roly-poly man who had this booming voice. And at that time, boys would slip out to get a smoke. Well, if he saw you, he'd call your name really loud and say, "And I'm going to tell your mama when school is over." He meant it. He always told everybody, you can go to college. You know, there are ways that but you know, you grew up, you didn't have any money. You wondered, what is he talking about? How are you going to go to college if you don't have any money? And those were in the 50s. I think I went to school in 54, I believe. Well, anyway, we grew up there. I loved school. I was not a good math student. I was a terrible math student. But English, anything else, I loved biology, but I hated when it was time to, what do you call it, dissect the little animals, like the frogs or something. We dissected frogs, and I always had a partner who was real good at doing that. I would write and he would dissect, because I just, seems like I could smell that formaldehyde forever. So I went through the school being in contest. I was in public speaking contest. Anything my older sister would do, I wanted to do it too. She was 4 years older than I was. My brother was 2 years ahead of me in school. So my sister was like always in a public speaking contest and plays in school, and I wanted to do the same thing. So when I was old enough, I decided I was going to be in the Elks Oratorical Contest, because that's what she was in. Well, I participated in the 9th grade. Of course, I didn't win. I participated in the 10th grade. I think everybody was an upperclassman. I won first place. That was the local. I went to the state. I won first place in Raleigh. Then I went to the regional, the district, which was in Gastonia. I won first place. And then I went to Florida, Winter Haven, Florida. First time I'd ever been away from home in my life. And of course, I didn't win there. I competed against 4 young men, and all the things that they had told us in North Carolina we couldn't do, like hit the podium or, for emphasis, they did it, and I was told not to do it. So those were strikes against me in Florida. So I didn't win. I think I came in 2nd or 3rd place down there. So back to school. The next year, I entered again. I was also in the public speaking contest for the General Baptist State Convention that my church was affiliated with. And then all these years, things went on. We started reading all the stuff about civil rights, justice, and equality. Dr. Martin Luther King's name became a household word. Everybody knew that name. Then we heard about the 4 students at Greensboro at A&T State University who did the sit-in. Well, we wanted to do the same thing. We had lots of restaurants in Sanford, but we couldn't go there. We could work there washing dishes or something, but we couldn't go in any of the restaurants. So a group of us got together in 1963. I was in the 9th grade, and we had upperclassmen and us. We wanted to do the same thing they had done in Greensboro. So we began to meet. We had to get a leader. Our leader was Reverend Dr. James R. Hampton, who was the minister of Blandonia Presbyterian Church at that time. He told us he would lead us as long as we followed his directions. We would not go off on the side. We would do what he told us to do. We met at night at St. James AME Zion Church. That was on Boykin Avenue. It was a little community church. There we learned how to sing freedom songs. We learned how to actually protest. We learned the, do not do anything, if somebody hits you, you turn the other cheek. You don't ever fight back at anything. We were following Dr. Martin Luther King's principles and ideas. Well, we met there for so long. We learned how to get limp when they were going to arrest us. If we were going to go to jail or be arrested, we learned how to go limp so that they would have a hard time, no matter how small you were or how big you were. They couldn't pick you up. But then they were determined to take us to jail. They turned hoses on us. They turned dogs on us. It was a lot of us, those whose parents would let you participate. Some parents were afraid and they wouldn't let their children, but some of the children would slip out and get into the movements anyway. We had the Southern Christian leadership people. Some of the young workers came to Sanford to work with us and teaching us how to protest, all the moves and things. And the whole time it was working on nonviolence. Now kids would never even consider doing anything in an unviolent way like that. If somebody hit you, you're going to hit them back. We were taught not to do that. Well, we worked there practicing, perfecting our skills so that we could actually march and go to jail. And then we started meeting at Reverend Hampton's church on Warner Boulevard because the crowd got larger and larger and larger. And then finally came the time when we were supposed to go out to see if they would let us sit in a restaurant. We were going to actually go out and do like they did in Greensboro. We had to divide up in groups because it was so many of us. And each group had a leader. My leader was Dorothy Donaldson, and she lives in Fayetteville now. But we planned the night before how we were going to march. We were going to go march up the highway to the restaurant. We were going to sing. And when we got to the restaurant, we were told, now, you go in, we were told, first of all, to make sure you carried a nickel with you. Because if somebody did decide they were going to let you buy a soft drink, it would be kind of strange if you didn't have any money. So you had to take, a nickel or dime with you. So the day for the first march, the marchers went, and yeah, they did. They went to jail. They threw them in the paddy wagon. I don't care if it was 50 in there. They piled them all in there at the same time. I wasn't in that group. I think that group was led by Miss Cheville Branch and Van Williams and Sophia McAllister at the time. And they put them in there. They carried them to the jail. Of course, you don't have any food. My friend, Dr. Joyce Williams' little brother from Jonesboro, had one short thigh in a paper bag. He had a sandwich, and you know how small the short thigh is with the chicken. And he had that in jail, and he was going to share it with everybody. I don't know how everybody was, I guess, to get one little pinch off of it. But anyway, they stayed in the jail cell, and they sang songs, "We Shall Not Be Moved." There was no money, there was no funds raised to get us out of jail if we went to jail. So our adult members of the NAACP would get on the bus and go to Raleigh to the NAACP, and they would get money to get us out of jail. Well, when it came time for my group to go, we were assigned going to Matthew's Restaurant, which is on Horner Boulevard. It was right across where Wachovia Bank is now, right near the Sanford Herald. And we were told, same thing, march up the street from the church. You're singing the whole time, all the beautiful protest songs that we had learned. And we were not overly loud, we were just marching, 2 by 2. My partner was Rhonda Martin, who was my classmate and childhood friend. And we went to the restaurant. We were told, now, if they won't serve you, you just sit down and you start singing. So when we got there, one of my classmates' mother worked in there washing pots and pans. Miss Daisy Birch. She was the mother of my classmate and friend, Milton Birch. And when we walked in, she was in there by herself, and she said, "Y'all please leave. We can't serve you, and I don't want any trouble." So we just all pulled out a chair, we sat down, and we began singing, "We Shall Not Be Moved." And we were just singing away, and all of a sudden the door pushes open, and these white men come in, and they had, looked like sticks and guns in their hand. Being young people, we weren't actually sure, but we do know they had weapons in their hands. They told us to get out, and we just kept singing, but then one pulled out, and may have been a BB gun or whatever it was, and they started firing and hitting the tables with the sticks, and we jumped up and we ran. And when we were running, we realized that Rhonda, my partner, had been struck on the leg, right down by the calf. There was blood, there was a little hole. We just assumed she had been shot. They told us to this day that no, it was a nail on a stick, and that's what caused the injury. Sanford Herald never did a story on it, but Jet Magazine did a story on it, and had her picture in there. So we all ran. We were so frightened. We ran. We went back to the church, and everybody was waiting for us. But we decided to disband the meeting for that day, but we would come back the next day. And our parents, at that time, a lot of men could not get jobs. Our parents worked in homes of people, our dads and uncles and brothers and other men. There was a wall right there where Blandonia Church is, and everybody would sit on that wall, and they would hope that somebody would come by wanting somebody to work for that day, and the truck would come by and say, "I need 2," and boy, they would run to get on that truck because, unlike the stories you've heard about black people or lazy, not lazy, nobody would hire you. So when those people came by to get somebody to work, everybody wanted to go work with that person. Sometimes it lasted 2 days, sometimes it lasted a month, sometimes it lasted a whole season. So the next day when they would all leave, we would go back up to the church, and we would, get our heads together and decide what we're going to do now. And I don't know how many times or how long this went on, but it went on for quite some time, even though we went to school in segregation, even to the 60s. But we marched and we marched and we marched, and finally we were able to sit in a restaurant and eat. And it always amazed me because some of the people where we went to these restaurants, I've actually served on boards with them. They don't know that I'm that same person, but I'm the same person I was then. I know them very well. But Lee County is a good place to live. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. I was offered jobs later on in radio in Charlotte and in Greensboro. I didn't want that. I love my hometown. There is still a lot of racism here, as with probably any town. It's going to always be a lot of racism here. You learn to do what you have to do, and you make it. There's some people who forget that if we take off the top layer of our skin, we're going to be the same underneath. So I like to say we're all kin. I mean, like a flower garden. We're all colors. If you read the Bible, we all have to be connected some kind of way. So it just doesn't bother me. When I got the job at the radio, being the first black female news person at a radio station here, people would tell me, you're not going to stay there because these rescue squad people and these law enforcement officers are terrible. I never had a problem. I did have two, and I guess they didn't call it problems, I did. A lady wrote a letter to my boss and said, I've been listening to her since she's been on the air. However, you should have never let her picture be put in the paper. I didn't know she was colored, so I will not listen to your station again. Then I had another one who came to the station to bring me donuts, and she ran in the door and she said, I just came to see for myself. And we were wondering what she talking about. She said, so you is colored, ain't you? I bought you some donuts. I told her I didn't like donuts. So those are the only two things that I can think of. I mean, actually, I've had a very good run in radio for 43, almost 44 years. There are the prejudices that were there when I came there, the prejudices that will be here when I leave. But I just let them roll off my back like water rolling off a duck's back. We have done some wonderful things in Lee County. We have helped to make this county great. We've helped to make this state great. We've helped to make this country great. We have a lot of success stories in Sanford and Lee County. And I think it will only get better as long as we don't give up. I don't want us to retrogress. I sometimes wonder, what would Dr. King say if he was alive now and see the way things are? Because in some instances, it does seem that things have retrogressed. It seems that people can't get jobs or still the last hired and the first fired. My pet peeve has always been like government housing. That's not meant to be permanent housing for everybody. I guess it's meant to be a stepping stone when it was first started. I know that everybody cannot afford a home, but everybody should have a home or a place to call mine when they go to bed at night. When they built the first projects in Sanford, my dad had the contract to do the floors and wash the windows. So that was a job for us. This summer, we got to wash the windows, and those were the prettiest places I'd ever seen. Those floors were beautiful, the windows were beautiful, and I wanted to know, why can't we live in one of these? And my mom tried to explain that we could not live in those projects because no more than it was, we owned our little home. So you couldn't live in the projects if you owned a home. And she would say, but when you grow up, you'll understand. I didn't at the time, but then I realized owning a home is the American dream. And once you get that home, you're part of the American dream. So I guess it was best that we did not live in public housing. We grew up in the little house that sometimes had 2 different colors of paint on it, but my dad built it, and it was still our home. It's still there. Bad stories here to be told. There are lots of good stories here to be told, and I like to think I was part of most of the good stories. And I think that most of the people here feel that way. We can see some changes. There's still a little light at the end of the tunnel. We have to find the light, and I know there is a light, but there's a long pathway that you have to follow before you reach that, and that means everybody has to work together to obtain justice and equality for all. And that's what I strive for every day. I write a blog. Some people will say, why do you write that? That just puts the races that more far apart. No, it's to let people know we never had our history put in history books. It's to let you know and our kids know the way it was. I didn't go to school during integration. I went during the segregated years. Most of our kids went to school. Blacks and whites went to school together. I never experienced that. So people should know what happened then and now. Because if you don't learn your history, it'll repeat itself. And I guess that's my take on Black History Month. I only hate that it's just 1 month a year. It should be year-round. You know, during Black History Month, you go to the schools, you see pictures of Martin Luther King and Jesse Jackson and Harriet Tubman, and kids can tell you all about Moses. Somebody's finally got that in their head. But there's so many thousands of blacks who have contributed to this world that nobody tells them about. So I try to find a new person and study that person each week so that when I write my blog, I can tell you about new people. Recently, I've started working on the stories of the Olympics and how many blacks participated in the Olympics when it first started and how they were treated in the locker rooms. No matter how well they did on the big field out there, when they got to the locker room, they were called ugly names. They were treated differently. Then I think about all the entertainers who would be called to a community to sing or to perform. Then when they were through performing, they had nowhere to go to bed. They had to sleep in their cars or whatever. So, you know, people try to hide this. And then some have been told, oh, the slaves enjoyed the way they lived. That's not true. So all these stories should be told so that black kids, little white kids, everybody should know that's not the way it was. Let's tell the truth. The truth will set you free.